And it's only the second time in their history the Wellington Phoenix have won 2 of their first 3 home games, and the Wanderers slip again. The Knicks up into 4th position above Perth Glory. We'll explain why we're wearing these T-shirts in a moment with John Cosmina, Mark Rudin and also Andy Harper, but we've got to touch on that game. Cosy, Wellington, good for the 3 points?
Yeah, probably a fair result in the end. I mean, the Wanderers, we always expected them to struggle a little bit. They actually had their opportunities. Wellington would look at the ones that they threw away, especially that one just before half-time when Louis Fenton should have made it 1-0 then. But look, Wanderers had a good spell after the break, to give them credit. But Wellington got back into it, and they probably will be, I think they deserve it with the 3 points, definitely.
Well, the save Penrose that Chovic had the force field around the goal happening there still, but nothing much he could have done about the goal itself.
No, and again, I thought defensive frailties there by the Wanderers. I don't normally say that, but when you chop and change, and he had to change, 3 out of the back 4 from last Sunday's final, I guess it's going to happen. Adeleke, I hope I said that right, the left back, he had a torrid time. He really did. There's a lot of improvement there. You can see he just ball watches and he allows Nathan Burns to get the run on him. But Mullen got dragged in as well. 4 stoppers there. You would say 10 metres between the left and the right fullback, which allowed that ball to go right across the face of goal. Full credit to Nathan Burns as well. But the left back for the Wanderers, he needs to improve defensively if I'm going to have a go at somebody in particular. And I think he knows what the A-League football's all about now, because he got shown quite often in that game, not just in that situation, but when he was isolated one-on-one as well, going forward too. But defensively, which the Wanderers are built on, they need to improve.
I actually think he did a reasonable job on occasions in the first half defensively, but I think probably fatigue at the end of that got the better of him.
We'll have more analysis of that one after our second match, which is coming up. It's Sydney FC's trip to Adelaide United, and more on that in a moment. However, we've got to touch on why we're wearing these shirts. Andy Harper, very good reason. For a very good friend of yours.
Yeah, well, it's not Wiggles Day. So that's not the red wiggle or the white and the blue wiggle. Now, 10 years since Johnny Warren passed. There's been a lot of acknowledgement of that this week. Was down in Jamboree actually yesterday at a Johnny Warren Golf Day. There we go. There's the great man as a youngster in his St George Budapest kit. And they have that annually. They have the Johnny Warren Classic Golf Day annually, but went down yesterday for 10-year celebration. It was a great day. Georgie Harris says g'day. He was regaling everybody about the day when a 19-year-old John Cosmina first broke into the national team. And Georgie Harris, Cosy, says he's never seen an older-looking 19-year-old. I'm not quite sure if that's I'm not sure if that was a compliment or not.
I thought George Harris was 50 when I met him.
Well, he still looks younger than all of us. In great nick, Georgie. And the day for me finished yesterday, as it probably should have, given that context. His best mate, John Economos, a long-time journalist covering Australian soccer, one of the great characters in our game, holding court on the veranda of the Jamboree pub, which is now a shrine to Johnny's career and to football in general. It's a great visit. And with John Economos telling stories about football, about Ray Bartz, about Bunny Curran, about the great days and about his great mate, it was a really fitting way to end that particular day for me. But the celebrations have been around the country. They're going to be around the A-League this week, and rightly so. We miss him dearly.
Yeah, you saw the hashtag up there for Twitter. Not that Johnny knew what Twitter was about. It was here after he passed, but his memory lives on, of course. And you type in that hashtag onto Twitter, there's some good memories there. And a very special thanks to Anthony Siokos, the Johnny Warren community founder, for supplying us with these shirts. And you can get your hands on one of these. Go to johnnywarren.net.au/shop, and all proceeds, and this is the important bit, all proceeds for those sales go towards grassroots football. It's also on Facebook as well. The group you've got to look for on Facebook is the iconic now Sheila's, Wogs, Poofters. I don't know how they got through that, the censors at Facebook, but they did very well. And have a look at it. And if you
interesting, just on that, they'd have trouble getting that through with the censorship.
Probably, yeah.
Well, just imagine how hard it was getting the publisher to do it.
Yeah.
And as Johnny used to say, if you reckon it's hard in 2002 with the Gay Mardi Gras and all that in Sydney, getting that title published, imagine what it was like in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, playing the game and being called it. That's how strong and hard the fight was, and that's why so many people over so many decades and generations have rallied behind what this guy did and stood for. And
read the book that Harps did with Johnny Warren as well. It's well worth it.
Say it again.
Sheila's, Wogs, Poofters.
Written by Andrew Harper.
No, that's not the good bit.
Oh, right.
And on Sunday, actually, here at Fox Sports, we're joined by a very special guest. with Tara, Bozza, John Aloisi and Ned, joined by not only Darren Lewis, but you see the special guest there, the great Les Murray, who after so many years of service, and him and Johnny just carried the sport on television in this country for a very long time. The great man from SBS, Les Murray, is joining the guys on Shootout on the couch. So look out for that on Sunday when the A-League round is wrapped up. But it continues right now. We're into the second game. As mentioned before, we'll have a full analysis of the Wanderers' loss in Wellington after this second game. It is Adelaide taking on Sydney FC. And before it, Michael Zappone caught up with both coaches.
We've seen various styles since you've been in charge, a lot of possession-based football, but when you look at some of the statistics, especially what Eugene Galekovic has been doing, a lot of long balls from him especially, is that something that you want to see from him tonight as well?
Depending. It's something that we do depending what the other team is doing. If the team is pressing us, in that moment the space is in his back and we need to try to take profit from this. And if they drop and they wait us, in that moment the space is in our field, and in this moment is when we keep the ball. Depending what the opponent do is what we play.
So Arnie, can you tell us about the decision around Alex Brox?
Yeah, look, he won't start tonight. Probably if we played on Sunday he would, but since a short turnaround from last Sunday, it's probably a day or two too short. But he's pulled up quite well, and it was touch and go, but he's travelled down here today and he wants to be part of what we're doing, which is a great thing.
Now, we know you've had some success, especially against Brisbane with that high press. Will tonight's condition play any impact at all in how you approach the game?
No, not at all. It's I don't want any excuses. Same for both teams. We'll go out and play our game. As I said yesterday, we've got 2 or 3 ways of playing. We can drop off and hit them on the break if we want to. So that's what we've tried to build up in the off season. But if they're there to be pressed, we will.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Magnificent record in the A-League in his last 25 A-League games, Graham Arnold, including finals, goes back to the Central Coast days, just 4 losses in 25. It's a fair record, and it's building up nicely at Cooper Stadium after a pretty warm day in Adelaide. Thankfully, the sun will be gone, but these two sides, of course, off to flyers in the A-League, and we'll rip into the preview right now with the guys. And Cos, you're going to start with a guy that you know very well, of course, from your time at Adelaide United, Eugene Galekovic. You see the guy that... He doesn't look like a guy who rants and raves in a dressing room or anything like that. But is he behind closed doors? Does he drive everyone on?
No, look, I gave Eugene the captaincy when I took over there in my second stint. I think he was probably humbled by the experience of it. But he's grown into the role, and his game has advanced so much. And Eugene, for me, and I know him really, really well, has a very, very, very strong presence. I mean, we talked about Ante Čović and his force field. With Eugene, he fills up the goals, and he looks to me more composed than he's ever been in his career to date. And I actually feel a bit sorry for him because he hasn't really represented Australia, and I think he's been good enough to do it.
Harps. Adelaide United have rejigged things in the last couple of weeks, probably because Osama Malik's come back in. But what does that mean for a guy like ITYS, who was basically playing 2 positions with and without the ball early doors? Does it change things a little bit for him?
No, not really. Look, I think the Adelaide team is flexible enough to move within the confines of a game, not just from week to week. This guy's a sensation. Before the Wellington game, it sounds like I'm on having love affairs with number 6s at the moment. Before the Wellington game, we're talking about Alba Riera.
Does your wife know?
This guy is outstanding. He plays that role to perfection, and we've seen exactly how important these types of players are in the development of the A-League, and what he's doing at Adelaide with Gombau's leadership. But again, you take certain players out, and they've got players. Koruska, we talked about Brucey's goals. I love what Osama Malik brings to a team. But I reckon, as far as the structure's concerned, if you pulled a CS out, the whole thing starts to collapse a little bit.
He's irreplaceable at the moment. And the thing that I've noticed about him is, I was impressed with him last season and his industry. But this year, I think he's gone another level. He's a lot more assertive during the course of a game. He's starting to look to spray more passes around and more varied types of passes as well. But defensively, he's great. They will struggle if they do lose him.
Rudes, to the crucial elements about Sydney FC, Seb Ryle appears to have been pretty good. I don't know if you agree from a defensive standpoint, being a hardened defender yourself. But interesting night ahead because he's got either Awer Mabil or Therio to start off with, and they've got options on the bench as well, Adelaide.
Yeah, you'd think that he'd be up against Therio, particularly, knowing that he likes to press high. Both fullbacks like to press high, either on the opposing fullbacks or their wide players and their wingers. But Ryle is up against Pej Bowic. Pej Bowic won a championship with Graham Arnold at the Mariners, so it tells you just how well Sebastian Roll is going. He has played in that central defensive position a number of times for Sydney FC, but I think he's best suited playing as a right back. I think he's less prone to making mistakes. You need a bit more experience in there. He does give the ball away a little bit too often for mine, but he's going great guns at the start of the season. He really is getting up and down the touchline, and he's pressing at the right time, so he's understanding the instructions laid out there by Graham Arnold, and yeah, he's doing well.
On the other side of that back four harps is Ali Abbas. Now, you look at Adelaide, the way they play, they love, like, when the ball turns over, Karuska gets the ball and just sweeps it to one side. So you reckon Ali might not get as far forward as he possibly might want to, his natural kind of want?
Look, I don't know about that. Even though Arnie, when he's defensive, his fullbacks do tend to overlap. We saw it at the Mariners. It was a hallmark of the Mariners. And, I mean, you talk, again, a recurring theme tonight, players who don't get the plaudits. And in a star-studded Sydney FC lineup, Ali Abbas is one of those. He's a fantastic player, great character, unbelievable athlete. You talk about his capacity to motor for 90 minutes is incredible, but his durability, you know, he's a player who's available for selection every week, and I'd reckon, without speaking on behalf of Graham Arnold, he'd be one of the first on the team sheet every week.
Checkmates time. Now the guys utilise 3 questions that they think that the team that they've got have to answer in order to win the game. And of course, it's not a competition. John Cosmina, say it every week. John Cosmina, over to you about Adelaide United. The 3 points that you want to make about them.
Yeah, look, I've looked at the way that Sydney set up, and they'd like to get their fullbacks high. I think if Adelaide can actually stop them playing through Antonis or Dimitrijevic, because they like to go through midfield that way, and maybe let the centre-backs have the ball a little bit more often, then they can get some joy out of that. The width, obviously, through Thurio and Mobile. Use the spaces in behind, as Karuska did for Sirio's goal against Sydney FC in the FFA Cup. And, well, I mean, it was, I guess, forewarned, certainly in the discussion with Gombau before, that they don't mind playing long. I don't think they need to be frightened of playing long out the back.
Rude, Sydney FC, your 3 questions that they need to answer?
Yeah, it's got a lot to do with John Cosmina and what he thinks or he suggests Adelaide United have to do. But they have to stop their wide players, quite clearly. Mobile and Thurio, they love to play out in those wider areas and try to isolate defenders, and they've been extremely successful scoring from those areas. I think they have to press Adelaide high. I know Cosy spoke about those long balls, but if you really analyse Galekovic's long balls, I think a lot of them were played from one position, opening himself up, going to the opposite direction. And I think if they can get him to play centrally, they'll get a lot more joy out of it. And effectively from set pieces once again. And if you dissect 4 goals Sydney have scored in the last 2 games, 2 have come from outside 30 sort of metres. Okay, it's not every day that you score those sort of goals. And last week they scored 2 directly from set plays. They need to continue to be effective against the Adelaide side, who aren't good at defending set pieces.
Tips, gentlemen, Harps?
Adelaide.
Yeah.
Sydney.
Why's that?
I think they've got something about them at the moment. I think this is going to be a real test for Adelaide. But, I mean, I know they've lost Alex Brosk, who's sort of been a little bit of their talisman at the moment, but I think Sydney have just got too much about them.
And Roots?
Can't split them. Watch them in the FFA Cup and had to go extra time. And I think they're 2 very evenly placed teams, and as is suggested on the table as well. So I'm going to pick a draw.
Fair enough. Thank you,
boys.
Adam. I went Adelaide. I'm pretty sure.
And you're sticking with it?
I'm sticking with them, yes. Home field advantage and all that. But we'll find out after the break. These 2 sides are very much in form. The last 5 teams to have at least 10 points from the first 4 games have made the grand final. With all due respect to Melbourne Victory, could this be a little grand final preview? Well, hopefully it lives up to the billing in the next 90 minutes. On the other side of the break, we'll be over to Robbie Slater and Brenton Speed for all the action. You're live on Fox Sports.